Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Ego App Worlds podcast. We are covering the MobaFire Fantasy Tournament with a $10,000 prize pool. My name is Snakebaby, and finally, we are back together. We have completed the Triforce item, and it feels good. First of all, Piston Switch, how was New York treating you?
Oh, it was incredible. I had never been to New York City. It was an 11-hour car ride that I made with my brother. So that was brutal, but the games were awesome. I was there for the first 3 days of groups. So we saw Group A, Group B, and Group C. We saw the Gigabyte Marines take down Top in just an awesome game. We saw JDG with the Aatrox carrying that tiebreaker. And so yeah, it was an awesome trip, tons of fun. And the highlight was definitely making it on the broadcast with this sign right here.
Hmm,
So this sign getting me on the broadcast. Yeah, the videos on my Twitter, we were going crazy. It was a really good trip.
nice, nice. I kind of want to do this off script. Question to you now. I want
Hit
to
me.
kind of address the elephant in the room. How did you think the NA teams were doing?
Well, we won 3 games, which is 3 more than the first week. Um, I'm just gonna hang my hat on. We were 5-3 versus EU. So thank you, Mad Lions, for the win. NA greater than EU. Lives true another year. That's the. I mean, it's obvious. 5 is greater than 3. Let's go.
Okay, okay. So the whole NA teams were not what do you say, available to beat Rogue for the amounts of wins, right?
Not even close. But you know what? NA directly against EU is the winner.
Fair
I'm
enough.
hanging my hat on that because I got nothing else. I got nothing else.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Anyways, moving on. We also have Demon with us today. How are you doing, Demon?
I'm all good. Good. A bit of a busy day, but otherwise everything is good. We like it busy.
Nice, nice. So, okay, the group stage are done, and we have the knockout stage ahead of us. There are now 8 teams left in the tournament, and this is a single elimination bracket. The matches are best of fives, and yeah, hate to say it, but if you lose, you're out. No second chances, no nothing. So let's catch up a bit first and talk about the knockout stage. We have a new leader at the tournament. His name or nickname is One Danne One, and he's currently leading in the global league. So, what do you think that is, Demon?
I mean, like he did a naughty one. I didn't see this coming. I didn't even know this was possible, which is unfortunate since I'm considered a fantasy pro. He substituted out one of his players and substituted in a Gen G player while he already had two. So he actually, for the last week, he actually had three Gen G players. I mean, like, of course, that's not the only reason why he's leading right now. He has had a solid run through planes and also through group stage now. But that's like a little naughty one that he did that I think pushed him over the edge towards the end there.
Yeah, totally. It kind of blew my mind that he did that. And for what I can tell, he is doing some fantasy tournaments in the CS:GO scene at the Ego app. So I mean, I would believe that he is a veteran in the like Ego app universe, and maybe that's why he used he has probably used that trick before. So
Yes, his title is Fantasy Pro in the Ego
yeah,
app as well. So
there you see.
he's
Yeah.
he's been here before.
Yeah. Piston Swish, which players or team surprised you in the group stage?
Yeah, so the biggest surprise was, of course, NA not winning. I thought they were going to win every group, so that's the biggest surprise. No, other than that, honestly, just how big the divide was between the Korean and Chinese teams versus every other team. Rogue obviously had that really good week 1, so they're probably the biggest surprise, especially from a fantasy perspective. Comp was so good in that first week, so if you had the trust in Comp, then he definitely performed for you. Me and Coach D-Man were talking about it before, as he was like one of the best options. I didn't go with it, and regrets there, but kind of came back to earth in week 2. Other than that, Comp definitely came through for you if you had the faith in him, which I didn't. But really, just the biggest difference between the Korean and Chinese teams versus the North American teams. My biggest problem on my lineup is I had the two players from C9, and they were terrible. But realistically, out of all the cheap options, Gigabyte Marines, Flying Oysters, 100 Thieves, really they were all 1 and 5. And so the key was just to get as many of the Korean and Chinese players. I only had 3. We saw that Dan, the leader, he had 4, and I think that's the difference.
Yeah, totally. Speaking of the performance, do you think there were any players that like overperformed based on their price?
Yeah, so really, there's not a huge difference as I look at these rankings from the first week, and I'll have these posted on the article once it drops on the Ego app. But realistically, there's not a huge difference between the top players at each position, and so really, it all comes down to price. And the best prices among these teams was RNG. It was Gala and Breathe. They actually finished as the top players for their position, and they were not really highly priced. They scared me away because they're in the same group as Gen G, and I wanted Gen G players. But definitely RNG Breathe, RNG Gala, they were the plays.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, like at least for me, I see Dawn as the biggest surprise factor. I didn't expect them to do good at all because I didn't have any faith in the team moving into Worlds. But when we're looking at like the top performers here, like their AD carry was third most points, their jungler was second, their mid laner was first, their support was first, and their top lane was second. Dawn collected a lot of points throughout this tournament, and I think they were also quite cheap, a lot of them. So I think those are some players that I really didn't think would perform to the level that they actually did in terms of point value.
Yeah, fair enough. Actually, like speaking of that, knowing the outcome of the group stage now, D-Man, would you change your lineup anything? Which players would you pick instead? What you had?
I mean, like it's like Fiston said, get more Asian teams in there. I went for Sven and Berserker in my team. I had more faith in Cloud9 than I should have had. I guess I got baited by how they played against the other NA teams in the summer playoffs. But if I would have to change anything, I probably would go a bit down in economy on some other roles potentially, just to make sure that I get 4 Asian players in and not go for Berserker and Sven. Sven would probably still be in there just because of how cheap he is, but I wouldn't go for Berserker. Also, I think Piosik kind of treated me bad as well in terms of the point value. I would most likely try to look for something else there. Get some T1 or down 1 players in there potentially as well, because they performed quite well towards the end anyways. Especially like Zeus would be a target for me as well, because he was so cheap, and the point difference between him and the top performing in Breed as well, it wasn't that big. So most likely I would go more towards the RNG over Gen G players because they were cheaper, and also go a bit into T1 and maybe Dawn 1 as well. But it's impossible to go back into the past and change that now. But that's what I would have done if I knew the groups would end like this.
Yeah, if you could see into the future, right?
Yeah.
Zayas was one of the recommendations of my my podcast co-host over the League of Fantasy Legends podcast, which I host. He recommended Zayas. I told him he was crazy because T1 wasn't going to make it out of groups. I was definitely wrong there.
Yeah, one of my lineups that I almost went with was actually included with Zeus top, but I decided to go with this lineup I did, and now I regret it a lot.
That's
I
right.
can tell you that much.
Yeah, and your podcast partner's name, he goes by Biscuit, right?
That's right. Yep,
Yeah,
Biscuit.
yeah. I actually listened to that pod or that episode of yours, and just wanted to give him a shout out.
Yeah.
He could
Thank you.
definitely see into the future in that aspect.
Yep.
So we're gonna analyze a little bit about the our teams in the group stage, and where did you end up in the group stage and why? If you made any progress or fell down. And I can start with my team. I got super much help from D-Man picking my team, and I went for Sven and Berserker as well. And then NA happened. So yeah, it didn't go so well. I also did a Hail Mary play at day 8, sold Berserker and 369 for Breathe and Gala, and put Captain on Gala, and just prayed for RNG to carry me to higher numbers in the global league. And I think I made some progress. Going in to the group stage, I was like 500 something. I didn't really keep track of it, but now I'm at position 60. So I think I made some progress, but also we had some people joining quite late and like starting from the group stage. So I don't know if the numbers are boosted as well, but I think I did all right. Like with my knowledge and my first time doing the the fantasy tournaments and everything, I think it's okay being like maybe top 50 in the end. I think that's a okay result for me at least. But Piston Swish, how did you do? You were quite close in the you were top 5, right?
Yeah, I was sitting right about top 5. I'm now 11. Really was top 5 until the last day. I had 2 players the last day, but apparently a lot of people had 3, and so it dropped down a little bit. It was okay. I had 369. He was good, but not great. I think Kanavi in the jungle for the same team was a better pick and kind of took some of the resources that I was hoping 369 would get. His insane Aatrox total 1v9 carry performance was in a tiebreaker game, so a little salty I didn't get those points. But other than that, yeah, I had Chovy. Chovy was, what you expected. He was 11 CS per minute, but their bot lane was so good that games, they didn't use him at all. So he was, he was good, but not great. And then I had Viper, which I sold for Jackie Love, and so both of those were fine. Neither of them were stellar, but so sitting at 11, I think I've got an outside chance to win, but I would certainly have to, both pick some players that are not highly picked and then have them win worlds. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, D-Man, do you want to comment on your team?
I mean, like, at least I made some progress. I moved into group stage at 73rd spot, I believe, in the ranking. Now I'm up to 45, which is some progress. I was at like 28th place at best at some point, but towards the end there, some people passed me, just like Piston said, with having triple players in the last week. But I made some progress. I did a Hail Mary kinda in the last for the last 2 weeks. I substituted in comp instead of Berserker and put him as captain to try and salvage some points because comp wasn't a fan favorite. He wasn't that much picked, so I thought if I get a lot of points on comp, I will get points that other people don't get, and I could climb a bit. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out that good. Rogue didn't go that great in the second half as they did in the first half, so it could have been better. I also took out 369 in with Breed. It was a good at least, but I also did a mistake in the last week of captaining Breathe over Chovy. I think if I did it on Chovy, I would have gotten more points, but it was the same logic there. I tried to do what other people don't to make sure that I can get some points and climb in the rankings to be able to close the distance. So overall, I have been climbing since the planes, but the planes kind of screwed me over. So I'm a bit out of it, but with some weird strats now and maybe some upsets happening in the knockouts, I might be able to get up in the top as well.
Yeah, I mean you never know. You're never like out of it. The like if you say that the top 10 players try to think like you do and trying to score some quick points with picking some player, and maybe they fall off. We will have to see. We will have to see. Moving on to the main stage event or the knockout stage part. The seeding has been done. How do you think the bracket will play out? I can ask Piston Swish this.
Yeah, I think we've got some really good matchups. I think the only one that I'm confident will really finish the way that everyone expects is JDG over Rogue. I think, like we said, the Asian teams have been so dominant, and Rogue looked pretty bad in that last week, especially in that tiebreaker game. And so that one looks pretty obvious. Other than that, Gen G, came in as the favorite. I still think they're the best team, but they got a tough draw in Damwon from their own group. They beat them in the Korean playoffs, the LCK playoffs. But, both of those teams are so good, you could see that going either way. EDG versus DRX, I think will be a good one. DRX, came in with pretty low expectations. EDG is the defending champ, but yet DRX has looked so good. And then T1 RNG is just like the best historical matchup of all time. A world's championship rematch from I think season 3 or 4. I don't really remember exactly which year, but such a just like great matchups all around. And I think they're toss ups. So they're gonna be super fun to watch. It's gonna make it hard to pick a lineup though.
Yeah, for sure. Demon, do you want to comment on this as well?
Yes, I mean, like, I have a bit different view on this. I think, of course, the ADG, as you said, it's a clear favorite and probably the safe bet if you want to have a team that qualifies for the final. It's probably the highest likelihood that they will do. And I would actually say the same thing with Gen G. I think they are quite a lot better than Dongwon, actually. Still, after I've seen this group stage play out, I still think Gen G is a fan favorite, and I think they should, rightfully so. If you're looking to make some upsets and maybe climb a bit in the ranking later on, I think like the groups you should be looking at is T1 versus RNG and the EDG versus the DRX, because one of those teams, of course, from each of those matchups will qualify to the semis. And from there on, it's just one more best of 5 until they are able to get to the finals. So if you look into climb points, I think like RNG, T1, ETG, and DRX players is like the way to go if you want to gamble it. Otherwise, the safe play for me at least is Gen G and JDG as the finalist.
Okay, moving on. Which team do you think will win Worlds?
Well, I've got Gen G. I think they've been the best so far. The only game they lost was the game they kind of trolled with the Senna Singed, which was, I mean, awesome to see as a fan, but they got crushed. Other than that, they really, what their bot lane did to 100 Thieves, like I will have nightmares on for years and years. At one point, it was, 4 items to 1 in the bot lane. I mean, just disgusting. And so I have Gen G. I know it's the popular pick, but that's what I'm going with.
Yeah, that's not a bad pick. I mean, seeing what they did to RNG as well, like maybe not make Gala look silly, but somewhere along those lines, like they dominated at some point that bot lane as well. So yeah, that's a solid pick. I think I need some more time to like figure out my answer. Demon, do you have an answer for this?
Yes, I have a pretty clear answer actually, and it's the same as Piston. I think Gen G is the ones who are gonna take it home. I'm actually using them like just today before the scrims I had earlier today. I used examples from their games showing how they would play certain situations, giving and like trying to implement it into our play style and our games as well. So I think like Gen G is by far the best performing team. I think they're the most solid team in terms of team fighting as well. And they seem to have it really down to the wire how they are supposed to maneuver in team fights. It looks very solid from them. And like on the other hand, like when I'm looking at T1, I also used the T1 games as an example today, but it was more for mistakes, what we shouldn't do. So T1 is one of those teams that I think they might turn up just because of individual skill, but as a team, I don't think they're that great. So for me, it's the Gen G that's gonna win, and like the dark horses is kind of T1 and JDG, kind of obvious as well. But that's like my 2 dark horses are T1, JDG, but my clear favorite is Gen G.
Okay. Well, I guess it's my time to answer now. And yeah, I mean, you can't deny that Gen G is like super favored to win this thing, but I don't know. T1, also DVG. who has a 4-win streak right now, might be able to do something. I mean, the you shouldn't be able to like count them out, but I don't know. It's a best of 5 as well. Like, it's gonna be hard. I think I'm
And
gonna go for T1 actually. I mean, I think they can mess things up in the bracket. So by saying that, I should also pick now T1 players, right? To be able to back up my statement here. But yeah, I just have a feeling, a gut feeling. Probably Gen G if you like rely on the history and stats, but I gotta trust my gut feeling on this one. So speaking of that, which player in what team are you picking and why? Well, I'm gonna pick some T1 players, obviously. More than that, I haven't figured out. But Piston Swish, do you have a lineup in mind?
I've certainly been thinking. I looked over the prices yesterday. I haven't finalized mine, and I probably won't until right before. Sitting at 11th, I'm going to have to be a little bit of a contrarian if I want a chance at 10K. And so I'm not sure I'm going to be able to pick Gen G. I'm going to have to root against them and hope they get upset. I'm still waiting to see exactly, but certainly I think Chovy, I said it before the group stage, but the way he just gathers resources and then team fights well, I have noticed I didn't watch a lot of Korean games. Obviously, my podcast is pretty much straight NA, but he's really not taking part in a lot of the early game skirmishes. It's almost like he's more focused on gathering resources for himself. And so in some of these games that they crush, he finished with a 1-0-2 scoreline in a game where they had 15 kills. And so I don't love that, but you can't deny 11 CS per minute. I'm also looking at Kanavi from JDG. They put him on Graves, I think 3 times in an Italy game too, where he's just, a lot of the junglers, after 20, 25 minutes, all the farm gets donated to, their ADC or their bot lane, but he's really soaking a lot of that up. And so that's, why he was the top scoring jungler. He had an insane like 12-0 Graves game too. So those are places where I'm really looking, just the guys that are going to, eat up resources for themselves and then use that to team fight well.
Mm. So carry junglers
Yep.
is it like a bold move, or is it more like a secure move, would you say?
I think it's a secure move because even if they don't do well, they're gathering up the farm, the resources, and they're going to be able to get kills. You need to. I'm avoiding, Maokai and Sejuani jungle picks at all costs.
Yeah.
I mean, like, what you got to be careful about is those champions will be picked anyways, and like even
Right.
carry junglers will be put on those champions in some games. So those points, like, you still have negative influence there anyways. Even though you
For
go for
sure.
carry junglers, like there were gonna be games. I thought like that with Steel in the planes, and he only played like Pop and Mocha and stuff, and it didn't turn out good for me.
Right.
So
Yeah, I
I'm
think
staying away from carry junglers with this one.
Kanavi played 6 games of carry junglers in the group stage, and then I think he picked Maokai in the tiebreaker game that didn't count for points, and so certainly
Yeah.
he could. I just think he's got the best chance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Demon, do you
I
have
mean,
any
like,
team in mind?
I don't have a finalized roster, but what I'm looking to do is build a team with Gen G and JDG players, and then some dark horse in there. So like T1, as I talked about already, as a dark horse, and try to get as much points as possible. But I'm also looking into like trying to get this cheesy stuff with like 2 T1 players and maybe like 2 EDG players or 2 DRX players to potentially like, if upsets happen, I gain a lot of points and other people don't. And if I decide to go with that route or the safe route, we'll see, because I don't know what others will do. I'll try to keep an eye out on the leaderboard and see what people do, and then I will do the opposite, I feel like. But right now, what I was playing around with it, like now when you guys were talking, and I managed to put together one roster that I think would be really solid. And it's Zeus in top lane, Kanavi in jungle, Yagao in mid, Ruler in bot lane, and then Lahens as support. And then I have 2 Gen G players, 2 JDG players, and one T1 player. And I think that would be a pretty solid roster.
Not
Now
bad.
we saw Ruler with the Senna game in the first one, and I think
Yeah.
he scored about half a point total. Are you afraid that he might go back to Senna?
I mean, like, of course, it's best of fives. Things like that will happen. Stuff they're playing might not work out, and then it might be bad for them, like in terms of points for the next game. But I'm just hoping that Ruler and Genji will win every single game 3-0, and then they don't have to adapt and go into any Senna picks, and maybe they play actual AD carries for that.
Right.
But I don't know if I will go for this. It's just what I put together now. That's something that I need to be afraid of, but it's also a gamble that I might be forced to take to be able to climb.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if we only could look into the future, right?
Yes, it would be so much easier.
Yeah. Cell tokens. Does anyone here have any cell tokens left? Nope, me neither. So the question that we got from our producer is if we will be using any cell tokens, and the answer is no. But
I mean, like if he gives me some, I for sure would. But
under the table, under the table.
yeah, I accept donations.
Yeah, no, but if you are a player and you have cell tokens left, when is a good time to be using them? Would you say?
We were
I mean,
just
like
trying to get. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, for me, I think it's only like two positions where you would use it, and it's kind of for the first week in the quarterfinals. If you have two cell tokens left, I would go with like the team that I think will win from each group or from each like matchup for each quarterfinal. So I would go with like JDG, T1, Gen.G, and DRX, for example. And then for semifinals, I would then swap out the two players that from the two teams that didn't make it into semifinals. So that way you will make sure that you have a team or a player for each quarterfinal, and you will also kind of secure your way for semifinals, and then you have a higher likelihood that for the finals you will actually have play a lot of players from both sides. So splitting up in the first week of quarterfinals and then selling for semifinals. That's what I would do. But I think most people still use their cell tokens, so there's not going to be a lot of those shenanigans, I believe.
Yeah, and if you still, with the rule that we learned kind of late, if you, really, say you believe in Gen G to win, you have two players from them to start, and then you can use your two cell tokens. You could load up with four Gen G players. They win the world championship. You skyrocket up the rankings. So
Yeah.
if you've got those cell tokens, you could really load up on one team.
Yeah, totally. That's a really good
Yeah,
answer.
I think both of these two strategies that we just talked about is probably the two optimal ones that you should do. Like one more safe one and one more all-in type of strategy, depending on where you are at the rankings. I think at the top of the leaderboard, like the one I said, is probably the best. And then if you are like spot 5 or down, I think you might need to take a bit of risk, and then it's probably like the one that Piston said is more fitting to you.
Yes. Moving on. The reduced prices now for the main stage. How much will that impact your lineups? Kristen?
Yeah, so what I've noticed is that with the exception of like Ruler and a few others, pretty much everyone's right around that 200 mark. So you can, for the most part, load up your roster with whoever you want. I mean, it's not exactly that way, but for the most part, you're going to be able to get the players you want, and so it's really less about trying to find value and more about trying to load up and predict what the bracket, how the bracket will play out. So it's a lot more of trying to pick the winners than trying to find the value.
Yes, I agree 100%. What I would say is the best strategy to go into this is pick a very cheap support, and then you try to load the other roles with as expensive players as possible, kind of. Because if you go for a support that costs like 162, then you have like 40 extra to go plus that 200, or like go over that 200 mark, and then you can like assemble a pretty good team that you with players that you think will qualify for the finals.
Where do you think you will land in the leaderboard after all this and this is done, so to say? Number one?
Number one, baby. We're going for the 10K. I'm gonna do my best. I do think it'll be Gen G versus JDG in the final, but that is the most likely what most people will pick. So you'll probably find me straying from that a little bit, and trying to hope for upsets because I'm trying to win.
Yeah, you'll probably find me either in the top or at like spot 200.
Yep.
I can tell you that much. I'm probably going in guns blazing and trying to get the most weird stuff as possible, and hoping, praying to the gods that I actually climb and those players perform.
Listen,
So
load up on Rogue. Load up on Rogue, baby.
yeah, that's one of my plans. We'll see if I'm if I have big enough balls to do that.
Yeah, and speaking of my team, well, if I'm gonna be true to my words, I'm gonna load up with T1 players, but I don't know. I can see like the most like perfect outcome is if you pick what is their name, DVG players, right? To
Yes.
knock out the Gen G players.
Mm-hmm.
Then you will surely rise. But I'm going for we can name it now to the D man approach. I'm gonna either win or crash and burn.
Yeah.
That's my take on it.
All or nothing. All or nothing.
All or nothing. Yeah, for sure.
And even if I crash, I still have my friend in the 8th place right now, Pixlim, and I'm rooting for him to claim the title. So even if I crash, I still will follow him and make sure that he wins.
Fair enough. Fair enough. We have one last question today, and that is, what do you think is more important? Like knowing more about the esports scene, or more of knowing how the fantasy works to perform well in this?
I mean, like, this is pretty clear to me. If we just look at the leaderboard, we have a CS:GO fanatic like at #1 spot right now, who's like a veteran in the fantasy or at least the ego fantasy scene, and he's leading the board right now with like 5 points down to the second place. So, and then if we look at the second place as well, it's Dota 2 champion.
I
So
saw that as well.
so like it looks like knowing a lot about the fantasy and especially like the ego rule sets and everything and like all the small tricks, tips and tricks. I think that's what will put you over the line. Um, at least that's what I think, and from what I've seen, that fantasy knowledge is more important than game knowledge.
Yeah, certainly not like game knowledge is worthless, but you take someone. I've got a lot of game knowledge as long as you talk only about NA teams and in that format. And so, I find me at 11, quite a bit back from those guys. So I think you are right. Just trying to find, where I don't even want to say loopholes, but the strategies where, if you don't take advantage of it in a certain way, then you really don't have a chance. I think of the cell tokens in that way. If you don't use the cell tokens the right way, you don't have a chance. And so, yeah, just you really got to know how it all works.
Yeah, for sure. And I notice in the top 10 right now we have two persons that has the tag pro slayers as well. So
Hmm.
uh, I would assume at least that the top 10 right now, and you at 11,
Yeah.
having quite deep knowledge of how the like ego app universe work. But still, you never know. I'm at 60 right now. I can be top 5 in in a few days. So you never know how it's gonna be in the end. So yeah, a good mix of both of them. Those things are probably best. Knowing a lot about the Chinese and Korean scene would probably be beneficial in this aspect, at least in worlds. But at the same time, we have Pistons, which is a crazy NA fanatic that is on 11th place. So I mean, I picked some NA players and I did quite poorly with them. So I mean, it's all about the some luck and some knowledge, I would say, and knowledge
Yes.
about
Sorry.
the about the.
I'm sorry for the performance of the NA players. I'd like to personally apologize.
We can't hold you responsible for it, but yeah, that's going to be everything for us at the Ego App Fantasy Podcast this time. And yeah, good luck out there, and we'll see you in the next one.